You know that feeling when your brain decides to become your worst enemy at 3 in the morning? One tiny worry pops into your head, and suddenly you're convinced you're going to lose your job, your friends secretly hate you, and somehow you're also probably dying from that weird pain in your knee. Yeah, that's an anxiety spiral. And here's the crazy part. There's a 10-second thought that can stop it cold. Not therapy that takes months, not medication. Just one simple mental shift that rewires how your brain processes fear. But here's the thing. I'm going to share 5 powerful habits with you today. And the last one, that's the game changer. That's the one that makes everything else work. So if you skip ahead or click away before the end, you're literally leaving behind the most important piece. Don't do that to yourself. Stick with me until the end. By the time this video is over, you're going to have a complete toolkit to shut down anxiety before it takes control. Let's get into it. Okay, so first, let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when anxiety spirals hit. Because once you understand the enemy, you can defeat it. Here's the deal. Your brain has this ancient alarm system called the amygdala. It's been around since humans were running from saber-toothed tigers, and it's really good at one thing, keeping you alive, by making you terrified of everything that could possibly go wrong. The problem? Your amygdala can't tell the difference between a tiger and an awkward text message you sent 3 hours ago. To your brain, they're both threats. So it floods your system with stress hormones, and suddenly you're spiraling. One thought leads to another, then another, and before you know it, that awkward text has somehow convinced you that you're fundamentally broken as a human being. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. Here's the good news. Your brain is also incredibly flexible. And with the right tools, you can literally train it to respond differently. Habit number 1, the 10-second thought. All right, let's get to the main event, the 10-second thought that stops anxiety spirals. Ready? Here it is. When you feel that spiral starting, you pause and ask yourself this one question. Is this thought helping me, or is it just hurting me? That's it. 10 seconds, maybe less. But here's why it's so powerful. See, when you're spiraling, your brain treats every anxious thought like it's important information, like it's protecting you. But most of the time, those thoughts aren't protecting anything. They're just torturing you for no reason. When you ask yourself whether a thought is helping or hurting, you force your brain to step back and evaluate. You shift from being inside the spiral to observing it from the outside, and that tiny bit of distance, that's everything. Suddenly you realize that imagining every worst-case scenario at 2 in the morning isn't actually preparing you for anything. It's just stealing your sleep and your peace of mind. This simple question interrupts the automatic pattern. It creates a gap between the trigger and your response, and in that gap, you get to choose what happens next. Habit number 2. The grounding anchor. When anxiety hits, your mind leaves the present moment and time travels to some imaginary future where everything goes wrong. Your job is to drag it back to now. Here's how. When you catch yourself spiraling, focus on one physical sensation, just one. The feeling of your feet on the floor, the texture of whatever you're touching, the temperature of the air on your skin. This sounds too simple to work, I know. But your brain literally cannot maintain an anxiety spiral while it's focused on present moment physical sensations. It's neurologically impossible. So combine this with the 10-second thought. Ask yourself if the thought is helping or hurting. Then ground yourself in something physical. You've just created a 1-2 punch that anxiety can't handle. Habit number 3 is what I call the evidence check. And this one's going to feel like a superpower once you start using it. When an anxious thought hits, your brain treats it like absolute truth. But is it? Probably not. So here's what you do. When you catch yourself believing something scary, ask yourself, what actual evidence do I have for this? Not feelings, not assumptions, actual, concrete evidence. 9 times out of 10, you're going to realize that your anxiety is based on speculation, not facts. Your friend didn't text back immediately, so obviously they hate you? Where's the evidence? There is none. They're probably just busy. This doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid. They are, but feelings aren't facts. And when you separate the two, anxiety loses most of its power. Habit number 4, the worst-case reality check. Sometimes the best way to defeat anxiety is to actually look directly at the worst-case scenario. I know, that sounds terrifying. But here's the thing. When you're spiraling, the worst-case scenario stays vague and undefined, and vague fears are the scariest kind. So instead of letting your brain torture you with undefined dread, ask yourself, okay, what is actually the worst thing that could happen here? Define it, be specific, and then ask yourself, could I survive that? Could I handle it? Almost always the answer is yes. Maybe it would suck, maybe it would be hard, but you'd figure it out. You'd adapt. You've survived hard things before. When you do this, you take away anxiety's favorite weapon, the unknown. You replace vague terror with a concrete challenge that you can actually prepare for. Habit number 5, the most important one. Okay, here it is, the last habit, the one I told you not to miss at the beginning, and I meant it, because this is the foundation everything else is built on. Habit number 5 is self-compassion. I know that might sound soft or cheesy, but listen to me. This is the difference between people who overcome anxiety and people who stay stuck in it forever. When you spiral and then beat yourself up for spiraling, you're adding fuel to the fire. You're teaching your brain that anxiety is dangerous and shameful, which only makes it stronger. But when you respond to your anxiety with kindness, when you treat yourself the way you'd treat a scared friend, everything changes. Here's what this looks like. When you catch yourself spiraling, instead of saying, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal?" Try saying, "Okay, this is hard. My brain is trying to protect me even though it's not being helpful right now. And that's okay. I'm learning." That's it. That simple shift. But it's revolutionary. Because here's the truth. You cannot hate yourself into healing. You cannot shame yourself into peace. The only path forward is through compassion, through patience, through treating yourself like someone worth taking care of. This is the foundation. Without it, all the other techniques become just another way to fight against yourself. But with it, they become tools for building a life where anxiety doesn't run the show anymore. So let's bring it all together. You now have 5 powerful habits to stop anxiety spirals. The 10-second thought that interrupts the pattern. The grounding anchor that brings you back to now. The evidence check that separates fear from fact. The worst-case reality check that takes away the unknown. And self-compassion, the foundation that makes everything else possible. Here's what I want you to understand. After watching this video, you're not the same person you were 10 minutes ago. You now have tools that most people never learn. You have the ability to catch yourself spiraling and actually do something about it. The next time your brain tries to convince you that everything is falling apart, you're going to be ready. You're going to pause. You're going to ask yourself if that thought is helping or hurting, and you're going to choose a different path. That's your transformation. That's what you're walking away with today. Anxiety doesn't get to control your life anymore. Not because you're suddenly fearless, but because you finally have the tools to work with your brain instead of against it. Now go practice. Start with the 10-second thought. Use it tonight when your brain tries to spiral, and watch what happens. You've got this. I believe in you, and I'll see you in the next one.